I had to drive faster. Luckily, I didn't get a ticket. By the time I finally made it back to my company, I was 1 minute late past the time I should have been there, and my boss was already in a meeting with the CEO and his team. "What the hell are you doing here so late?" "I'm sorry, I had an incident on the way to work and stopped to help a pregnant woman." Those are just excuses for not doing your job properly. Why do I care if there was a pregnant woman asking for help? Weren't there other people to assist her? It seemed urgent. She was about to give birth. Others would have taken care of it. Or do you not see that our work is more important? Right now, you're going to pack your things and get out of my sight. You're fired. Hello, my name is Aaron, and even though it might be wrong for me to say, I am a person who never arrives late anywhere, much less to my job. This isn't because of a learned habit, nor is it because the telecommunications company I work for made it a mandatory requirement when signing the contract. Although, I will talk about this later, my boss did tend to be very strict about his employees' punctuality. My habit of always arriving early to places stemmed from a growing anxiety that had accompanied me since childhood. Therefore, if I had to be somewhere at a specific time, it was very normal for me to arrive up to 10 minutes early. This was a quality that benefited me when I was hired, because as I mentioned, my boss seemed to have a particular grudge against people who did not have the discipline to be in their respective offices on the dot. If one day you think about being late, or even worse, not showing up to work, you can excuse yourself from ever appearing at the office again, because you will be fired.
And what if we have an emergency?
There is no such thing as an emergency. If you really had to go somewhere, you would have informed us in advance.
That's why they're called emergencies.
The only way I would accept you not being on time is if you had a serious accident and were practically dead. And even then, I would want to see the corresponding medical documentation to verify your story before firing you. I can't have lazy people making up excuses to avoid covering their position. It wasn't just paranoia about being in the office fulfilling the schedule without any failure. My boss also seemed obsessed with adhering to a specific plan within those 8 working hours. For instance, the coffee break had to be at 11 o'clock sharp and couldn't last more than 10 minutes. If someone needed to go to the bathroom, it had to be between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, and it couldn't take more than 5 minutes on the clock. If someone exceeded the allotted time, even by a minute, the boss would go ballistic. He would scold the person for their lack of punctuality and decorum, claiming they were wasting everyone's time with that attitude. Besides scolding them, he would assign them more tasks or make their day more difficult. In the end, with this psychological mistreatment, most employees opted to stay seated at their desks and not risk taking breaks for fear of exceeding the established time.
Aaron, have you heard the latest news? It seems the CEO's sister is coming to visit the office next week.
Ah, is that why the boss is so stressed? He's been growling and breaking more things than usual these days.
Probably, you know how he gets every time the CEO comes to supervise. Imagine when he wants to bring visitors as well.
That day we'll have to be here an hour early to clean and practice military greetings, I can imagine. Who is this supposed CEO's sister anyway, and why does she have to come? As I was told, the lady in question was another successful entrepreneur who owned a very well-known cosmetics brand in the country. At the moment, she was on pregnancy leave. I couldn't remember well. The point was, she hadn't been working for a couple of months and would still be absent for the rest of the year. Her brother, the CEO of this company, and my boss's immediate superior, had invited her to take a look at the office, as they had recently renovated one of the floors and wanted to show it to her. Anyway, I wasn't interested. We all had to keep striving to meet our goals with or without visits. I didn't expect that a week later, while on my way to work, I would be involved in an unfortunate traffic accident. Fortunately, there were no injuries beyond the scare and a few scratches for several drivers. But because a car ran a red light, several vehicles were involved in a minor collision in the city center. I was unscathed, and although my car wasn't as lucky, with a dented hood, it was still in good enough condition to get me to my office in time for my next shift. On another occasion, I would have stayed to fill out the corresponding report, but since I didn't want to get another scolding and possibly be fired by my boss, I thought it best to leave immediately. I would deal with the damages caused by the accident after my workday. However, I didn't count on another setback interrupting me before I could leave. One other person involved in the accident was a pregnant lady, and she called out,
Excuse me, could you help me get to the hospital? I'm in labor and I don't think the ambulance will arrive in time to take me there.
Isn't there anyone else who can take you? I'm already late for work, and...
Please, the hospital is just a couple of blocks away. I would go myself, but because of the accident, my car has a flat tire and it's impossible to move it.
Okay, I'll take you. But I'll only stay long enough to make sure you're attended to. I genuinely believed that if I hurried, I would make it to work just in time. But I was wrong. The traffic accident, which involved a dozen vehicles, caused a major traffic jam, making it an arduous task to reach the nearest hospital, to the point that by the time we arrived at its doors, I had completely abandoned the idea of being at my workstation on time. And, since I had given up that idea, I stayed at the hospital a while longer, accompanying the woman until her husband arrived and took over. We exchanged cards, and I left. I had to drive faster. Luckily, I didn't get a ticket. By the time I finally made it back to my company, I was 1 minute late past the time I should have been there, and my boss was already in a meeting with the CEO and his team. What the hell are you doing here so late? I'm sorry, I had an incident on the way to work and stopped to help a pregnant woman. Those are just excuses for not doing your job properly. Why do I care if there was a pregnant woman asking for help? Weren't there other people to assist her? It seemed urgent. She was about to give birth. Others would have taken care of it. Or do you not see that our work is more important? Right now, you're going to pack your things and get out of my sight. You're fired. I wanted to protest because my boss had not only fired me unfairly, it was the first time I was late to my job, and for a completely reasonable reason. But he had also yelled at and humiliated me in front of more than 30 people who were there with him at the time. But I concluded that it wasn't worth it. Perhaps it was better to accept my dismissal and look for another job where I wouldn't have to put up with a toxic boss giving orders all the time. And yes, I ended up going to my office to collect my things and leave. I didn't expect that a few hours after I left, the CEO of the company would call me to his office to discuss a private matter that supposedly concerned me, even though I had already quit my job. You see, Natalie, the woman you helped get to the hospital, is my sister. She showed me your card when I went to visit her. How? That's quite a coincidence. It is. She was on leave from work due to her pregnancy, as the doctors said it was a high-risk pregnancy and recommended that she rest as much as possible. It's a good thing she found you during the traffic accident, because with the traffic and services overwhelmed, she probably wouldn't have made it to the hospital in time. I'm sure she would have found someone to help her. It was all a fortunate coincidence, and I'm glad it turned out well. Be that as it may, I've called you in to reward you for your good deed. Apparently, when my boss scolded me in front of everyone and fired me, the CEO had wanted to intervene to stop him from firing me. But he couldn't, because at that very moment, he was called by the hospital to inform him that his sister was admitted and he had to leave immediately. Now, a day after the incident, the CEO had called me to thank me for accompanying his sister, who could have died if I hadn't hurried to get her to the hospital when I did. And furthermore, the CEO wanted to rehire me at the company, only this time in a higher position. My boss would take my previous position, and I would take control of that part of the company, able to boss my former boss around as much as I wanted. Or, well, that should be the dream of any employee who suffered abuse from any superior. The truth is, in my case, I didn't even have to try hard to make things difficult for my ex-boss, as he constantly violated the most basic rules and had an arrogant attitude, typical of someone who didn't think he had done anything wrong to receive such unfavorable treatment at work. It can't be. I've been demoted from my position unjustly. And why? Just for demanding a minimum of punctuality. You should discuss that with the CEO. I'm in charge now, and I've asked you to make some photocopies. I'm not interested in your problems with the CEO. You're not interested? Well, you sure have taken advantage of it, and I'm not going to make any photocopies. That's what these other workers are for. I have more important things to do. My ex-boss turned out to be such a problematic employee, refusing to do tasks or doing them in the crudest way, that I even wondered how he had managed to get the position of boss. I talked to the CEO, and it turns out my ex-boss was in his position because his father had been a man of money and power, who had probably put him there as a favor. But that favor was about to end because it was impossible for someone with such an attitude to remain in the company. Having obtained the CEO's blessing, I made sure to fire my ex-boss. He didn't take it well, throwing one of his tantrums where he shouted and even destroyed office equipment. The police had to come to take him away, and he was arrested for causing a disturbance at our workplace, destroying private property, and even trying to assault me. Thanks to my ex-boss being taken to jail and finally fired from the company, many people were encouraged to speak out and share the bad experiences they had with him at work. A collective lawsuit was then filed for multiple abuses, and in the end, my ex-boss was sentenced to 4 years in prison. We later heard that just months into his time in prison, he was complaining about the food and insulting the guards. They ended up starving him for 2 days, and he has become so pale. Just last week, we received information that my ex-boss tried to separate a fight between some gang members in prison, but they both turned on him and beat him so badly that he got a black eye. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying, "I subscribed," and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
Well, I thought it was the start of his silent treatment until we reached home.
Tell me, is there something you're actually good at? You had an infection twice, had a miscarriage, and now you can't even hold a normal child? Is that not insane? What can you actually do?
I felt my heart crack in my chest. There was nothing I could say to defend myself. I felt defeated. No, I was defeated. Eventually, Tommy left the house. We had an altercation a week later, and he said it to my face that he wasn't going to raise a disabled child with me.
You haven't birthed it yet, and I feel so irritated already. God, I can't believe this.
I watched in tears as my husband grudgingly walked out of the house with some of his things. If I had the opportunity to be gifted with a superpower, I would have asked to be able to see into the future. Maybe if I could, I wouldn't have fallen into Tommy's trap. Hi, my name's Sally. Allow me to take you through my journey with an insensitive and thoughtless husband. I met Tommy during my college years. It was one of those typical college parties where the music was too loud and the drinks flowed freely. Tommy stood out from the crowd with his charming smile that caught my attention. He approached me with a cheesy pickup line, and surprisingly, I found myself laughing and engaging in conversation with him. We hit it off instantly. Tommy was smart, ambitious, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. We spent hours talking that night, sharing our dreams and aspirations. From that moment on, we were inseparable. The years we spent together before marriage were filled with love and laughter. We explored new places, tried new cuisines, and supported each other through life's ups and downs. Tommy was my rock, my best friend, and I couldn't imagine my life without him. As our relationship blossomed, so did our dreams of a future together. We talked about marriage, children, and building a life filled with love and happiness. Tommy was always attentive and affectionate, showering me with love and compliments. I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. After 4 years of friendship and dating, Tommy proposed to me. Of course, I agreed. I was in love with him and saw a future with him. Our first year of marriage was even more blissful. Our love grew, and we were slowly achieving our goals. After a year and 6 months of being married, we decided that we were ready to start having kids. Unfortunately, the universe wasn't ready to support us through all our plans. Firstly, after trying for 6 months without any luck, we visited our family hospital for a checkup. There, we discovered that we both had fertility issues that were stopping us from being able to have kids. It brought both relief and sadness to us. Relief because we knew what the hindrance was, and pain because we had to spend another 6 months getting treated. Since we both desired greatly to have kids, we were religious with our treatment and never missed anything. Luckily, once it was all done, we were good to go ahead with having kids. By then, 2 years had passed since we got married. Of course, people had begun talking. My in-laws had called us on one occasion to talk about it. Then, we were still in the middle of being treated.
Are you both not planning to have kids? It's been too long, don't you think?
We're taking our time, Mom. We'll have children once we're ready.
I mean, there was no way we could tell anyone about our issues. Once our treatment was completed, we were confident about having a child soon. 3 months later, I got pregnant. We were overjoyed. Tommy seemed even more excited than I was. He was so happy that he'd nearly cried. We immediately announced the news to family and friends who were equally as excited as us. When my mother-in-law and sister-in-law paid us a visit with gifts, I was moved to tears. I felt so loved and happy. Unfortunately, tragedy struck when I had a miscarriage when my pregnancy was only 2 months gone. I'd cried my eyes out, wishing for death after the doctor told me I lost the child. I spent a week at the hospital before I was discharged. My emotions were all around the place. At first, Tommy was understanding and supportive, but he soon began making certain insensitive comments that only made me feel even worse. Once we were together in the living room, and I needed to go pee. It had only been a week and 3 days after I had a miscarriage, so I still needed help around. I'd asked him to help me up, but he'd refused.
You only had a miscarriage, not childbirth itself. At this point, I think you're just pretending so you can receive pity.
I was rendered speechless. I couldn't believe he'd said such a thing to me. My emotions took over and I broke into tears. He left me in the living room. I struggled out of the couch and helped myself to the restroom. I didn't speak to him for a whole week. While we were still not on speaking terms, he was on a call with someone in the living room when he made an insensitive comment again.
Females are just full of unnecessary emotions. They make everything about them, like bad things don't happen to other people too.
I ignored him, my thumbs and eyes busy on my phone. He continued throwing even more comments until I was forced to go back into our bedroom. That night, I cried myself to sleep. We spent another week not talking to each other, until one night. I'd just finished my night prayers and was about to get in bed when Tommy suddenly came in front of me and went on his knees. As he apologized in tears, I felt my heart clench. I forgave him because I felt that the miscarriage had affected him too, and he didn't know how to purge his emotions. It was a dumb conclusion, but I believed it then. Luckily for us, 5 months later, I got pregnant again. When I got the news from the doctor after the test, I felt scared. I didn't want to go through another miscarriage and have to deal with those emotions again. It took me a week before I was finally able to muster courage to tell Tommy. His reaction was a relief. Although he was scared too, he didn't let it cover his happiness. I felt encouraged seeing how he reacted to the news. I was determined to do everything to make the baby stay with us. I followed all of the doctor's instructions and ensured I never stressed myself over anything. Tommy was of great help too. He assisted with the major parts of the chores and never complained. All we wished for was to golf our child in our hands. In the middle of the 5th month, we went to the hospital for a scan. There we got shocking news. Our son was suspected to have Down syndrome. Tommy didn't say anything as a response to the doctor. Even while we drove home, he refused to say anything to me. Well, I thought it was the start of his silent treatment until we reached home.
Tell me, is there something you're actually good at? You had an infection twice, had a miscarriage, and now you can't even hold a normal child? Is that not insane? What can you actually do?
I felt my heart crack in my chest. There was nothing I could say to defend myself. I felt defeated. No, I was defeated. Eventually, Tommy left the house. We had an altercation a week later, and he said it to my face that he wasn't going to raise a disabled child with me.
You haven't birthed it yet, and I feel so irritated already. God, I can't believe this.
I watched in tears as my husband grudgingly walked out of the house with some of his things. I didn't let it weigh me down for too long. I quickly helped myself out of my sadness and moved on with my life. I was determined to take care of my child in the best way possible. 3 months after he left, I came across Tommy at the mall while I was out shopping. He was out with a beautiful lady. I'd wanted to ignore him, but he approached me, the lady walking beside him. He introduced her to me with a sly smile.
This is Vivian, my cherished girlfriend. And guess what? She's carrying my child. And it's not like the retarded one you have in you. Our child is healthy and normal.
I felt sad by how quickly he moved on, and him calling my child a retard made me want to tear his skin off his body. I turned and walked away, ignoring his loud, mocking laughter. The months passed quickly, and it was soon time for me to have my child. I was all alone, but I wasn't scared. When my son was born, I was purely shocked. He had no Down syndrome. He was a very normal child. I cried so much when I held him in my hands. On the day I was discharged, while I was waiting for my ride at the reception area, I suddenly sighted Tommy's mother. Before I could call her, the woman saw me. She was so happy to see me and even apologized on Tommy's behalf and promised to bring him back to me. I'd simply laughed it off. I definitely didn't want him back. I was taking care of myself and my son, working hard and shutting out all negativity in my life when Tommy suddenly showed up when my son was 2 months old. His mother had told him about my son being normal. I was even more shocked when Tommy told me his new girlfriend's child had ended up being born without feet and also had Down syndrome. Well, I guess karma taught you a great lesson. I'm sorry, but I can't let you play a father's role in my son's life. Get out of my house. He tried to beg, but I refused to listen. Then he flared up, threatening to report me to the cops for not letting him father his child. I dated him to do that. Find something better to threaten me with, asshole. Show your shameless self out. I knew he would try something funny, so I filed for custody of our child. Luckily, based on the fact that he'd abandoned the child and went ahead to impregnate another woman because he thought our child had a Down syndrome, I was able to have custody of my child until he was 18 and ready to decide whether he wanted to remain with me or not. I was overjoyed. However, it wasn't the same for Tommy. 2 days after the court session, he broke into my house and tried to steal my son by threatening me with a knife. My screams woke up my younger brother, who was visiting at the time. When he saw an unknown man threatening his sister, he was livid. What my ex-husband didn't know was that my brother was a war veteran. He was in the Marines. Before my ex could blink an eye, my brother had beaten him to a pulp. I called the cops, who arrived and took Tommy into custody. While he was in their custody, I got a restraining order against him and also filed for an annulment of our marriage. Luckily, his attack was a sign that he wasn't doing well mentally, and there was also evidence of cheating. The mistress having a child gave me leverage, and I was able to get our marriage annulled. Unfortunately for my ex-husband, the mistress child was born with a condition that affected his spine, and he won't be able to ever walk normally, so he will be stuck in a wheelchair. Exactly what my ex won't want. Once all was done, I took my son and left the country with him to start a fresh life. My ex was sentenced to 6 years behind bars. If my son ever asked about his father, which I heavily doubt, I'm just going to tell him Tommy is dead. Not bad, is it?